Okay, so I did something, well, actually more like I built something. I built a precision base. Now this was because I had a school project, senior project, and I felt like doing something that could help me later on. Never had a base, always wanted a base. Boom, there's a reason. So it's a precision base with a custom paint job on it that took me 2 months to do. And I videotaped everything. And so I'm here to show you the process of how I built the base. And I call it Aqua. First, if you think that this is a how-to video on how to build a base, you're kind of right, but it's a senior project. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into when I started it, so it's not a professional build, it's just me figuring out how to do stuff. If you want to find a how-to video that you can do professionally, this ain't that video. Sorry. But that being said, let's get into it. So first off, I began by building the pickguard first. All the parts were relatively cheap, so I decided that would be the best place to start. Most of the work happened in my school's robotics workshop, just because that's where I had a lot of access to tools and electrical components, so you'll see me working there as well as at home. I began by installing the knobs and the jack first, and I decided to use speed knobs just to make the design more interesting instead of using a standard precision base volume knob. At first I thought that wouldn't work because they wouldn't go down all the way on the knobs, but then I realized it didn't really matter because the design looked fine and it worked just as fine as well. I started the soldering process by tinning all the ports on the volume knobs, and I worked my way using the pickup diagram. For the build, I decided to use Seymour Duncan vintage pickups just because I thought vintage would sound nice. So here's the rest of the process and how that happened. The next step was to work on repainting the body. I started off by sanding the original paint off in order to do that, and I brought it to my grandfather's workshop and started there. I began by using 200 grit sandpaper just to be safe, but I found myself working my way to 80 grit just because I got lazy. And yes, I could have gotten an unfinished body, but I felt like sanding it down just for the fun of it and gaining some experience. The front and the back came out fine, but the sides I did off camera on a belt grinder, which turned out to be a terrible idea. There are some rigid edges where there should be smooth curves, and looking back, I really should have just taken the time to hand sand the sides. But this process took about 2.5 hours to do in total, but for you it's probably going to look like 3 minutes, so... the paint is off, it's time to start the new layer of paint. I used grain filler to smooth out the wood and let some of the mineral spirits prep it for painting. Looking back, I should have worked in the filler a little bit more and let it dry along before sanding the top coat off, but the damage wasn't that bad, so in my opinion it worked fine. Now for professional painters, you may want to look away right now. This is where I really messed up. For the painting process, I used spray paint, but I didn't know there were such things as spray painting techniques, so I just started spraying in random patterns, which caused some unevenness in the coating. I used primer first and then the white paint, and I let dry for about 20 minutes between each coat, and did this about 3 different times. But I really should have added more coats of white paint to it. Looking closely, you can still see where some of the grain filler is discoloring the white, so it looks yellowish. And after a week, I smoothed the top coat of paint off using 800 grit sandpaper just so it would at least have some evenness to it, kind of fixing what I did. Unfortunately, the video of me painting the details on it got corrupted, but I can sum it up like this. And this.
Now take the knife, you have that little roll of paint on there, and push very hard.
And this.
I like your cut, G.
Let's have fun. Let's go. Time for the gloss coating. I used spray-on gloss polyurethane, trying to make it as shiny as a factory guitar. It worked a little, but because the detail paint was acrylic, I think it sort of made it more matte. I'm not sure, I don't know that much about paint. But I fixed a mistake I made while painting and used an up-down pattern across the body. I did 3 coats the first day and 3 coats the second day, so there's a decent amount of gloss on it. After about a week, I took it up to the workshop for the final sanding process. I used a new technique I discovered where you use soap and water to keep the paint from building up on the sandpaper, and this technique actually worked a lot better than I thought. I started from 600 grit and worked my way up to 3000 and got some very surprising results. It turned out a lot smoother than I thought it would with the hack job of painting I did. There are some spots where I noticed that the paint was coming off, and I tried to avoid these spots as best as I could. But it was a price I had to pay if I wanted to use a splatter paint design, because there were some spots that were going to have a buildup of paint on it. Back to the robotics workshop, I started by drilling the screw holes for the pickguard and installing some of the hardware. I then went back to the drill press and made the holes for the pickups and the grounding unit. The next day I started by wiring the pickups and installing the grounding unit, which was just a wire wrapped around the screw, and installed it into the side of the wood. In order to see if I was getting any signal, I hooked it up to the amp and started tapping the pickups to see if any noise came through. Luckily there was a sound and I knew the signal was complete. I put the pickguard on and finished off the build by attaching the neck. So that's the build entirety. That took about 2 months to make. I spent around like maybe $1,000 on it, but in my opinion, it was worth it. You know, I have myself a new bass, and I can play that using new videos. I already have one planned for a week and a half from now, so I'll definitely be using it in that. And now just for some quick clips. So that's the video. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.